You're now tuned in to DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio Show, where underground lives.
Now you are listening to DJ Toshi, Classic Storm Radio.
In the smallest arenas, the deepest of dives, and the most remote stages are where the greats are found. They find themselves reacquainted with the people there. The people that love the music, young and want to create with the music, and the ones that find, form, and funnel all the stories of the creators of the music. Them great ones love being a part of this cycle of creating creators, and no show's too small, no performance unimportant, and all audiences demand their intimacy. And on this one day, you turn through a storm of songs like the highlights on your life's pages. Classic verses that were a manifest you voted for. The grooves, the rhythmic character that crafted your stride. They said it, you see it, they lived it, you're in it. You're in a cinema of drum film, and soon you may direct yours. But for now, the frequency is to the score of Lyric Fellows and Beat College, brought to you by DJ Toshi. Now, on Classic Storm Radio, this is your brother, the low life with the homestone garment, the body glove with the bills, Hector Low, the true living God. Step in the score, Sunez, aka Illustrator Low, your host for this monumental episode 300, man. So we got a lot of reminiscing, a lot of catching up to do, all at the same time. So yo, let's get some beats from DJ Toshi, some rhymes for who he cuts up, and we'll be back with all of that. Peace. We are back. This is DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio, episode 300. Oh, that's ridiculous, man. Ridiculous, man. Peace to Rap FM, rap.fm, WRAP.fm. You go check the show there. They replay it. Go to DJ Toshi ClassicStorm.podomatic.com so you can download these and keep them forever. You know what I'm saying? And, yo, it's kind of a reminisce and rewind episode. This episode 300, as we take a look at, you know, for a while of what we've done and what 14 years that adds up to 300 shows. I mean, that's ridiculous. To work DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio is literally to be in a historical boom. And when I call the 2000s the dark ages, because media changed in the 2000s, the evil and the corruption that was slowly feeding itself in the mid 90s got larger and larger until it exploded in the 2000s. And it shows like DJ Toshi's that started in the late mid 2000s that really kept things alive, you know what I mean, that fought through those dark ages, just a labor of love, and made it into this transition of the internet, made it into this transition of podcasting. You know, podcast before was a podcast mix show. You know, before these things existed. You know what I mean? So it's also a pioneering show. So to be on episode 300 is also part of New York history as well. You go through the legacy of DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio, you're also looking at massive amounts of flyers from all the shows that are linked with the artists that DJ Toshi and Doc Ock and all of them have put together, you know, now dubbed Rock the House for years, but shows that they've done when it wasn't called that. They were just, you know, putting it together, not just the DJ Toshi Classic Storm Radio anniversary shows, but all the shows in between, where Classic Storm Radio is that beacon that really shows New York City hip hop and how it fought, you know, how it stumbled, how it suffered, you know, the when you want to see, like, wait, what does it look like to see the flood of work and the fashion looks of the lowlives come into reemergence. You know what I mean? And people like me that were never low lives and became low lives for what I do in hip hop. How that reemerged in the beginning of the 2010s and by the mid 2010s was in full force. And you go to a DJ Toshi led show and you'd see all the polo, you'd see all the fashion sense, you see the changing of the way people present themselves because the fashion sense is more masculine. You know what I mean? You'd see the emergence of all the great female MCs who refuse to take the frivolity and the sluttiness of the presentations that they're allowed to give, and actually rhyme and see them on stage. You know, all of these transitions for the better, you get to see as well into what I call this era from the 2010s on, the visible renaissance. This is where it became visible. DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio. This is one of the major beacons, that lighthouse. You know what I'm saying? That lighthouse. You know, when you get into Manhattan, you know what I mean? And you're in the Lower East Side, and you know, and you're looking at you're looking at the Rock the House show. You know what I mean? Right off the bridge. This is what it was, you know, and this is what it is, and all this COVID stuff, all that other stuff that has hampered the continuance of this can't really defeat that. It can't really defeat that. That DJ Toshi and Classic Storm Radio are crucial to the history of this music. And there's no way around it. You know what I'm saying? That as a historian, I say that with great bias because I'm embedded in it. I'm part of that because of DJ Toshi. You know, when we talk about resurrections of media, I only wanted to come back into this hip hop in 2010 as a writer. The thing I love best, to play with the words and really give the details to the music that I thought were not really done well enough. You know, finally show what it really looked like to make my writing art in hip hop be an element, an art form that defines and catalogs the music with real science. But then I got the chance, you know, to get back into interviewing, back into radio, you know, thanks to DJ Toshi, and really into podcasting, and that's because of DJ Toshi. And becoming a duo with him, I say, you know, we're the gangstar of podcasts, you know, and I stand by that defiantly because I don't think anybody is going through these interviews with the detail that I'm giving. I don't think that anybody has the intensity, you know what I mean, to speak through the music and not anything else, and speak through the music powerfully the way DJ Toshi is, you know what I mean? To have a career where once you mention his name, DJ Toshi, they know it's coming with integrity, you know what I mean? People in this underground world, or as I like to say, the best music world, they know that when you hear DJ Toshi's name, you're gonna have integrity. You know, so if there's any foul play, if there's any devilishment, if there's any, you know, typical industry shenanigans, everybody knows it's on the other side. These are facts. These are facts, and I stand by them. But just the joy of being able to hear, you know, a consistent show where you could go back and hear greatness. You could hear some of the greatest artists, you know, a network, you know, where DJ Toshi behind the scenes is doing things, recording people, you know what I mean? Doing all the things that people need in the music, you know? And it's just been a joy. And this year, we did most of our interviews, you know, via the phone, but we also tried to double them up and give them more detail, you know? Right? We tried to get to this 300th episode by mixing it up. I mean, we started with a duo, Jay Cyanide and Kev Brown, and that was amazing. And what's crazy is that it lasted to be like one of the albums of the year. Like in this world of 300 albums, I don't think you would want to leave that out of the mix. That's how good it was. You know, another duo, Frank Knight and Chuck LaWayne. You know, so the next level producer with one of the great performers. Tech and Steel, the diversity. You know, the diversity. Right? We had Marcano of the Leftovers, of which I'm part of the collective. We got to talk about gentrification and all these things that the leftovers bring with Engraved in New York and the Engraved in New York album. We got to talk to Spit Gems and FU, one of the great duets of the year with, Rikers Island Boxing School. We got to talk to Ralph Almighty out of Baltimore, and go through, and go through his trilogy, right? He's doing with Big Bob. Salute to Big Bob as he's going through, some tough times, you know what I mean? But, and their great trilogy of albums, right? We got to build with Beneficence and Confidence, right? Who not only made a great album together, but Beneficence made a really intriguing memoir. You know what I mean? And just for the show, I enjoyed reading that. You know what I mean? And the preparation we take to the show, like a little insight to that one. I read that book in a day because I didn't know we were gonna interview Beneficence, so I was prepared with the album because I had it already for a while. But I didn't have the book, and I read the book in one day, and that's why I was so into it, and I think it's such a great read because I couldn't put it down, even though I couldn't put it down, I had to finish it, but it was definitely a joy. We had the good people, Pause One, and with the show being, because of COVID, we decided to expand, and we got to go, outside of New York area, so we got Pause One, you know what I mean? We always stay in Brooklyn. We had Pete General. We always stay with the hardest boom bap, Cool Taj the Great. You know what I mean? My brother O the Great. We had O the Great. Right? A lot of greats, right? You know what I'm saying? We had colleagues in this podcasting world, like Rhinoceros Funk and his group, Agents of Reform with Yazid. Right? Again, all of these guys with incredible albums. We had the great Bumpy Knuckles who answered questions, that in a way that he's never been asked, and new questions he's never been asked. We got to hear the triumphant story of Smiley the Ghetto Child keeps triumphing. Nick the Exotic, with his, teaming up with Large Professor again and his thoughts on that. And we got to hear from Lucky Tad and Endemic Emerald and their duet album, producer and MC, and finally hear Lucky Tad has been a staple on that New York underground scene as an observer, as an MC going on the stage, as an up-and-coming guy, and finally getting that big break and doing something great with it. We got to go across out there, go back to the mat, go back to Massachusetts and build with Killy Shoot with his album with Yellow Point. So it's been a really, an incredible year, and we topped it off. DJ JS1, who's one of the greatest, DJs in hip hop renaissance, a DJ producer and one of the great graph artists. So we gave you in-depth interviews that no one really can find, and all of the music in there. I mean, it's just great stuff. You know what I mean? Listening to this music, it's outstanding, and it's a joy. And the celebration for that, the celebrations for DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio when they go on air, and we say, we say the anniversary show. The anniversary show is always fun, but it's also, in many ways, also like a relief. You know what I mean? A relief that that we could celebrate all that has been done, all that we have done. And the show was another success. Hosted by, to me, one of the great MCs of the year, Skanks. You know what I mean? And had the pleasure of being on his first album that he released. You know what I mean? Hosted, Minister of Severe Torture. And what was great about the 14th anniversary show is that when you have Skank, you have a performer that in between the artist setups, you just got him freestyling and kicking it and being dynamic and and ever engaging, And I think this year's show, the 14th anniversary, I think what it really shows is like DJ Toshi's a wonderful obsession with drums, the good people. Then he had Innocent, who it's crazy. I don't know if Innocent has reached his peak yet. He seems to be getting better and better. You know what I mean? And his live show is dominant as always, and even it sounded incredible. dysfunctional family that, was making a name for themselves, unlike before. Like, they don't, even without Napoleon the Legend being able to be there, dysfunctional family still has so much character, so much charisma, and so much versatility in the crew. And then a lot of the legends, a lot of greats came through, to show the love. Craig G, doing his hits and his new stuff. CL Smooth, and Rod Digger. So it's just as usual, a fitting show. A fitting show. And, definitely know that putting these shows together amidst COVID is no easy task, Definitely no easy task. But, yeah, yeah, it's probably the hardest shows ever to put together. You know what I'm saying? These last 2 years in this pandemic outbreak, probably harder with these, mandates that I find draconian, but definitely harder. And peace to everybody that put that together, that helped out, that showed up, and everything. And back to DJ Toshi, and we'll come back with some year-end review of these 300 plus boom bap albums I got in the collection. Peace. We are back. This is DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio, and we are on the incredible, legendary, all-time 300th episode, man. And it's also the year-end episode. You know what I mean? We have so much. There is so much great stuff lined up for 2022 that we're going to give you so much detail. So we're just here reminiscing and rewinding. You know what I mean? And if you get the chance, though, follow your brother Sunez, S-U-N-E-Z on the Instagram, you know what I mean? If you're into the martial arts, check me, DM me, train martial artists. If you're into hip hop and you want to read the books on it, I got my books out, The Filtered Reel. I got another book coming out. I have my Power Right show on S Street Media, so you go to S Street Media YouTube channel, you can listen to my Power Right show, which is about my show, about that element of hip hop. And I have a book that I'm doing now called The Reel of 2021. To me, the best music. I am not putting it together as a favorites list. That would be a big book in itself, but I wanted to make an even bigger book. I wanted to make a book where I broke down all the artists in ciphers, categories where certain artists would overlap and be in more than one category, and you would see the type of universe of this world that we are listening to and how expansive it is, as opposed to just naming like 5 or 10 albums that people like. And this is going to be a book that's going to drop very soon, you know what I mean? Early January, you know what I mean? And now we get to review some of it, you know what I mean? And in these brackets, I have like brackets like the burgeoning builders, people coming up. I have a separate bracket as I'm a 5%er, I'm part of the Nation of God's Nerds. I have a bracket of that, because we're so influential in what we say and what we do. I have a hardcore militant pop section, a boom bap essence section. This era I call the Invisible Renaissance. I have an Invisible Renaissance Essential MC list section. I have an MC's MC Works section, Crime Rhyme Street Lyricist section, the Progressive section, the Lone Treasures, Extended Verses, the Movie Cornerstones, a separate section called The Queens, Legends and Greats Ongoing from the other eras, the 90s and the 2000s, and a separate section for producers. So it's really filled, you know what I mean? And of course, these sections overlap, and they just give you a broadness of the universe. But when I look at my collection of works, I'll give you an exact count. This is how detailed we are here at DJ Toshi's Classic Storm Radio. Right, so I have 316 albums I would call full-length albums. So, you know, full-length has always changed. I mean, that has changed with the times, where Toshi, I think that we have to call like a 25-minute album LP an album. Like, it's crazy nowadays. You know what I mean? And I guess if it's 15 minutes or under 20 minutes, maybe it's an EP. But either way, if I add all of them up in my collection, not stuff that I didn't like, but stuff that I thought was quality and stuff, I have about 371 works, 371 projects. You know, some of the artists, they don't want to call it an album anymore. They just want to call it a project because the timing is just whatever it was. So we'll go with that. Now, out of these 317 projects, you know, I want to give you some of the anomalies, like things to look for that made the year so much fun. And if I had to say the first thing that really became fun was that there were so many great artists that made duet albums together, right? So if you listen, let's see if I can look it up. You have, well, what was one of the first albums of the year, and the duet I talked about was Kev Brown and Jay Cyanide. In other words, duos that normally wouldn't duet together, that aren't a group. So you had, and I don't mean just MC with producer. I mean two MCs. In this case, with Kev Brown and Jay Cyanide, they're MC/producers together. You know what I mean? And that became more like a J-Lib type thing, you know, which was really a lot of fun, right? And of course, you have the unique albums like Bronze Nazareth and Praxis, where he has Rock Marciano producing. But Rock Marciano's not really MC on this project. But I'm talking about MCs of different ciphers or just making duet projects, you know. Ridge, Rikers Island Boxing School. Who else do we have? I'm gonna do a quick search here, right? We have, let's see here, right? Let's see what we can find here. There were so many of them, you know. King Arthur and Zagnif Nori, you know what I mean? Uniting for the Killer's Manual. You know what I mean? Duets we already knew about, the continued Supreme, Cerebral, and Elo Kush. You know, the duets didn't stop this year, and I think that was one of the most fun things of the year. You know what I mean? Right, that was one of the most fun duets of the year. Was the Elo Kush one, continuing the Clark Connoisseurs. And I think that looking for the duets, you get a lot of the versatility. There are also a lot of crews that really blew up, and a lot of cornerstone movements that might be burgeoning, like Spanish Ran. So Spanish Ran, where Spanish Ran is recording, I think is becoming a milestone. So that whole new cliques that are finally coming into their own, like Church, you know, which is Spanish Ran, Blue, Mav. So there's a lot of other places that are really coming in with powerful works. And that was definitely something. Going back to these duet works, you had one of my favorite duet works was Napoleon the Legend and Nejma Nefertiti on their Alter Ego album. You know what I mean? And the wonderful thing about that is that Napoleon the Legend to me has been an MC of the Year candidate since 2018. Every single year, 18, 19, 20, and this year. But then he links up with Nejma Nefertiti, who has great synergy with, but she's reaching a prime. So she's on the verge. So it's just a great combo, and there was so much stuff this year. You know what I mean? It just was really a lot of fun. You know what I mean? We saw the continuation of Floods by MCs. So we saw a continuation of Floods from Raps Fresco. We saw small little Floods like Allah Preem, you know, who released a bevy of LPs. You know what I mean? We saw the emergence of MCs that I'll tell you is the future, like Pro Dillinger out there with the Umbrella, you know, the Umbrella Collective, which is also Allah Preem. We saw people continue like Don Pacino. We saw guys emerge that I think I'm excited to share with you. If you may not know, like Jaffet Music out there in Mass. You know, people we built with like Philly Shoe, you know, who are finally coming into his best records. You know, it just was an impeccable year. And if I just go down the line here, there is so much great work here, you know, and some of the work gets lost. Like, you know, I'll give you an example. You know, I don't see anybody really enjoying hip hop unless they're an obsessive collector right now, because you miss so much. look at Milano Constantine, you know? That seems like a quiet year. He had 2 albums, but one of them was with Showbiz. And I thought that that was some of the best work Showbiz has done in years. And not because Showbiz was lacking any of these years, but it just reached an incredible peak, you know? And that was another great album. You know what I mean? We see brothers, you know, keeping on, like with dynamic, intriguing characters like Greaseball, you know what I mean? Greasy Amin, you know, brothers out there with the rugged stuff like Noah the Flood, you know, they continued. I gotta say something totally unique in hip hop, and it's crazy, but the way that Killer Priest has concentrated his lyrics even more and turned them into like storybooks or something like these oral adventures or oral like journeys that Killer Priest is doing, and he released about 5 albums this year. I mean, Killer Priest to me has gone into legend status with the works that he's done this year. You know what I mean? I think Killer Priest, you gotta check him out. You know what I mean? You gotta check him out. The emergence. What was the most fun thing to see? One of the most fun things to see is the emergence of great MCs be recognized by everybody. You know, we were here and we were up on Rome Street from the minute that we heard Street Pharmacy. You know what I mean? Like, we heard the other works, we knew he was dope, but once we heard Street Pharmacy, we were like, nah, this guy's next level. And we've been building with him ever since. And but to see Rome Streets blow up, to see him dominate with DJ Muggs, to have the honor to build with him on my Power Right show, really get that detail out there. For him to get signed by Griselda and get out there, that was one of the most fun things of the year. To see producers really, like, that have always been around, to really have the palette, not the palette, but the free form to express all that they wanted to say, like Aguilar with his productions, or to see the best work that guys that have been in this game for over 25 years, 20 plus years, like the Bad Seed, finally put out their best work. And a lot of it has to do with the freedom that they have, because I think the Bad Seed is one of the MCs of the year. I think King Arthur is one. I think Sadak Nori, Napoleon the Legend, Rome Streets, Supreme Cerebral. These are all guys that I think that they would be essential, you know what I mean? So we saw impeccable stuff just be barraged the whole year long, you know what I'm saying? We see people on the come up, like, you know, that are just gonna come up. I mentioned Nejma Nefertiti, Lucky Tat, but Mav is also coming up. You know what I'm saying? I told you about Jaffet, Pete General, so Bankai fam is getting more players out there. You know what I mean? Killy Shoot, Plex Diamonds. I had the pleasure of being on one of his songs. You know, probably the most is K Burns. You know what I mean? K Burns with the great work that he put in. That Dirty Diggs album he released is by far his best work. And the producers, I think my favorite producer this year has been Dirty Diggs, you know, because their compilations, their albums with Supreme Cerebral, K Burns, Planet Asia, they just did it all. They just did it all. And it's a lot of fun when you listen to all their work mixed up. UFO Feeve had a great year, you know what I'm saying? I think on the progressive side, one of the most dynamic characters, a superstar. Starker had a great year. You know what I mean? His albums are great. I don't even know where to start with that. And I think the comeback for fun, I think that when we look down the years, we're going to really look with appreciation what Ace did on his Do or Die too. Because lyrically, it was just an impeccable album. You know what I'm saying? The velvet voice, you know, with rolling ball flow, the peak of syllabic melodicness, you know, in the pocket like a money clip bulge, you know what I mean? AZ was expertise and technique, you know what I mean? And he was building on the record. It was really great. So, you know, Nas, a little bit commercial in his albums now with Hit Boy, but the commercial aspect of his music is more so the vegetables around them, you know, the surrounding music. But when you listen closely, the MCing is at a peak, you know, at a different type of peak, I should say. You know what I mean? And honestly, it's not what people always want, but it's what you would expect in the history of music with artists that have had so much music out there. But if I had to pick a veteran, I had mentioned that it is the most progressive I've ever seen. It has to be a Killer Priest. But speaking of veterans, you have Planet Asia continuing to dominate. I think one of the unsung albums that I really loved was John Robinson's album. What's the name of that album? It was, I think Blue produced it, so it was definitely an interesting album. That was a really great album. What's it called? Yeah, King JR. King JR, you know what I mean? I thought that was a great album. I thought people slept on it. You know what I mean? But that's really a relative term, right, Toshi? Like, everybody seems to sleep on stuff. You know, that's why we're here. The Leftovers, obviously the collective I'm part of, I think they had one of the best albums of the year, Engraved in New York, you know what I'm saying? You know, I give myself a nomination for the best, you know, best lead off verse starting an album. I'm not gonna say I'm an MC or even have a great flow or none of that shit. But what I said, nobody's saying that shit. You know what I mean? Because that's what I knew I could do something that nobody else could say. So that's where I put my chips on. You know, when I do stuff. But you know what I mean? But it was such a great year. And I gotta say again, I think probably if I had to pick a favorite album, it'd probably go to my brother. You know what I mean? Because it was so heartfelt. I've been rooting for him for years. He's been inspiring me for years. Bronze Nazareth with his Frassus album. I think I've always said that he's a lyricist and then a producer. And no one has really, really looked at the proofs that I get out. And I think with this year, with the Frassus album, I don't think it could be denied anymore. He's just one of the great lyricists in this hip hop music, you know. And me personally, I think all time, I think he's great. We were talking about producers of the year, and I said Dirty Diggs. I think Alchemist always has to be in the running. I'd also have to put Team Demo, because they did so much Bad Seed stuff, and they did a lot of Leftovers album, you know. And that New York, man, that New York song from the Bad Seed Honey De Niro Stuck B album. Oh man, I love that song. You know, it's one of my favorite songs of the year. You know what I mean? Aguilar is always in the top producer because he had so much work, and all of it was so. The more you listen to it, the more you see the depth of it. You know, I think Griselda, they always exaggerate how dope their works are because they're supposed to, but their works were still strong. You know, Big Ghost LTD had some nice stuff this year. A good up and coming producer to look for, the two that I really enjoyed was Hobgoblin. He had some good stuff. A compilation album, Awakening. He produced other people's works. I forgot who. He produced somebody I had recently studied and wrote about in the book recently. You know, because this book is so big that I'm not even finished with it yet. You know what I mean? But oh, he did produce Spoda's album, my man Spoda, who had a nice year. You know, peace to Spoda, right? Who else did he produce for? He produced another album, I think. I just forgot who. You know, but he definitely did some great work on Spoda's album, right? And I mentioned Dirty Diggs, Recognize Real. You know, Recognize Real is on the come up as a producer. That album he did with Cerebral, Gold Chain Warrior. He has another album with Rashid Chappelle that's unheard, and it's incredible. That's all I'm gonna say. When it comes out, you'll see. You know, I can't speak on that album too much, though. You know what I mean? I think Napoleon the Legend is always an MC of the year. His 3-album Hole in My Heart series that I had the honor of being on that first one. With Akhenaten was really great. I think Napoleon was extra incredible this year because he really focused on his journey. And the fact that he got all 6 albums worth out of just intriguing battle bars and the analysis of his journey and struggle, all being fresh material, was amazing to me. You know, it was amazing to me. Sleep, an album people might forget though, and we gotta admit, even though he's always been more of a commercial hardcore artist to me, you know. But Lloyd Banks, Course of the Inevitable, that's an album to revisit. That was a very strong album. Mac Hami, I'm not a big fan of Mac Hami. You know, I feel like a lot of gibberish on the mic too much, and people overrate it. But he did make a great album. If we talk about lyricists, Sky Zoo always has to be in the running. All Brilliant Things was lyricism, another lyricist composition notebook, you know what I mean? And I had the honor to build with him, you know, Starvin' B, Riggs. They had albums that people forget about. They only had one great album, you know, like nowadays you need like 50, right? I talked about the emergence of Rome Streets, but you gotta put Ransom in there too, because Ransom had a great album with Big Ghost, and he also had the duet album with Coup de Grace with Rome Streets, and that was a great album. So, you know, another one of the great duet albums this year. You had groups like Billionaire Rebellion. I got the honor to introduce their album, Ghost Lineage. That was a great album. You got up and coming guys like St. Chris with Roaring Twenties. Oh, the Great, who we had on the show, who released 2 great albums. SD Nat kept doing it. Willie the Kid throwing things on the low, but still powerful. And of course, you had legendary Ka, you know, who's really was the dominant force, the dominant lyrical force of the 2010s, with another great album, Martyr's Reward. I mean, all you could say is probably that you're not surprised. That's probably the difference now when you hear a Ka album, you know. Toshi's not surprised anymore that he's not going to get a drum on a Ka album, and I'm not surprised that it's going to be incredible lyricism, you know. But again, that's what Ka brings, you know what I'm saying? Raz Fresco finished his Magneto Was Right series, and it was as stellar as it ended more stellar than it began. So you could see the rise of an MC, you know. Also, other producer that is up there to look for is Body Bag Ben. You know, he ended the year very strong. You know, his album with Jay Cyanide is a banger. Jay Cyanide, you know what I mean? Rim is always powerful. Eddie Kane, you know, Bub Rock had a really intimate album as expected, you know. A lot of great stuff that goes under the radar. Planet Asia, Rule of Thirds, produced by Evidence. His Holy Water album. His Dirty Shaman album with Dirty Diggs. So Planet Asia's up there for MC of the Year as he continues to be. So it's pretty amazing the amount of work that I saw this year. Rashid Chappelle, you know, he continues to make great work, you know. Short works that people might forget about. Rashid Chappelle, 15 Minutes in Queens, great album. Spit Gems, Pardon My Poetry, you know what I mean? That was a really great one, you know what I mean? Blue Azul, right? BLOO, who had a great year this year. And Spanish Ran had the Blue Delilah EP, which is only 3 songs, but it was great. And the many EPs that Allah Preem had, you know. Also, my man Lex, you know, Lex had a quiet year, but that 1234 EP was very good, you know. If you're looking for short works, you know. Right, so some MCs didn't really get to throw that much stuff out, like Sauce Heist and Tyda Dale, and Baby Main had the Heist New York EP. Ill Conscious has a nice import-export EP with Marstini. So they didn't get to throw out that much stuff, but it was strong, very strong. You know what I mean? Very strong. So it's just a great year. Of course, there's tons of names I'm missing, but I'm not gonna miss them in the book. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna miss them in the book, Toshi. I'm gonna get them all in there. You know what I'm saying? All the great stuff. You know what I mean? Also, producers. Maybe I'll leave it last year with Wave the God, because I mentioned Eddie Kane. I mentioned Rim the Villain. I mentioned Bub Rock and all those guys. Spoda, Rome Streets, The Walkers. They're led by, you know, the Standouts as producers. That's the name of the producer crew, the Standouts, but also Wavy the God. You know what I mean? So it's the Walkers as a clique that has MCs and producers. So that's almost invincible when you start looking at things. You know what I mean? And DJ Muggs had a more quiet year than the last two. But my favorite DJ Muggs is a favorite of mine. My favorite DJ Muggs works besides the Rome Streets album was his Winter 2 album, the compilation. So some great beats there. He also did a good one with Crime Apple, you know. Even though Crime Apple's hard to listen to sometimes because he never rhymes in the pocket, but his albums with Muggs are always good. And also, can't talk about producers of the year and DJ Toshi loving drums without mentioning Stu Bangers. You know what I mean? Stu Bangers always gives you a lot of great stuff. You know what I mean? And I'm looking forward to that Capadonna album he's produced. You know what I mean? I'm very interested in that. Very, very interested. That's right. That's right. Him too, man. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You know what I mean? There's a lot of young producers out there. You know what I mean? And they're on the come up. You know, so like one thing that we didn't see at the beginning of the 2010s, we see in the beginning of the 2020s, is that the producers are coming with better samples than they did in the early 2010s. I'm hearing a good mixture of drumless beats, sample digging, you know, better drums, EQing the drums, different patterns, you know. So the producers are trying to match up with all of these varied MCs, like the Albinos out there, the Starkers, the guys that rhyme crazy. You know what I'm saying? And it's fun. And of course, though, this year wouldn't be as much fun without Nettins, you know, with his fuck the life, you know, don't ever disrespect me, you know. Congo has some beats that might be a little bit more commercial, but that whole Bing Bong and everything, it's a fun album. And Congo is a fun album. You know what I mean? It's a really fun album. You know what I mean? So salute to Nems, man. You know? Yeah, so that's definitely a highlight of the year, you know? But with that said, man, you know, hopefully that'll get you into it. Look out for my book, The Reel of 2021. It's also going to include The Reel of 2020. So it'll be a complete beginner's guide to the greatest music of this decade that we're in. You know, it's going to come out soon, paperback and also digital. You know, and until then, just engage in these DJ Toshi Classic Storm Radio podcasts. Check out all the great music he plays, you know what I mean? And go from there in your digging quest, you know? But with that said, Toshi, we talked enough about the music. Let's play some, man. Back to you, Toshi.